Imagine a world where a man, sentenced to 20 years in a Mexican prison for murder and drug trafficking, slipped through the grasp of justice not once but twice. Yes, we're talking about El Chapo, the infamous mastermind behind the Sinaloa cartel, who is now in the most expensive prisons in the world. It all began in 1993, when Guzman was first captured in Guatemala. His notorious exploits led to a 20-year sentence in Mexico. But prison walls couldn't contain the cunning mind of El Chapo. In 2001, he orchestrated a daring escape, bribing prison guards and vanishing into the ether. As the world hunted for him, the stakes rose. An $8.8 million bounty hung in the air, a tantalizing reward for the capture of the slippery fugitive. The manhunt intensified, and the mystery deepened. But wait, there's more. El Chapo's audacity knew no bounds. In 2014, he was back in the clutches of Mexican authorities, only to defy captivity once again. A tunnel clandestinely dug into his cell became the portal to his freedom in 2015. The world watched in disbelief as he slipped away into the maze of tunnels, leaving authorities stunned. Then came the dramatic shootout in 2016. Mexican forces, relentless in their pursuit, engaged El Chapo in a high-stakes confrontation. Bullets flew, tension soared, and justice prevailed as they recaptured the elusive criminal. The saga, however, was far from over. In a stunning turn of events, El Chapo found himself facing the harshest of penalties. In 2019, he was pronounced guilty of multiple criminal charges related to the Sinaloa cartel. A life sentence awaited him, and the walls of the notorious ADX Florence, the Alcatraz of the Rockies, became his final fortress. Today, behind the impenetrable walls of ADX Florence, El Chapo serves a life sentence, his tale one of audacious escapes, daring captures, and the unyielding pursuit of justice. Join us as we unravel the suspenseful chronicles of a man who, against all odds, danced on the edge of freedom and captivity. The story of El Chapo, a modern-day enigma in the heart of the Rockies. In the heart of the Colorado Rockies lies a fortress shrouded in mystery and whispered legends, ADX Florence, often called the Alcatraz of the Rockies, or, as former Warden Robert Hood put it, a clean version of hell. But what lies within these impenetrable walls is more than just a prison. It's the Alcatraz of the 21st century, a place where the echoes of notorious names bounce off the cold, unforgiving steel. ADX Florence, with its steel and concrete, holds within its grasp the stories of those who embraced the shadows. It's a place where danger has a permanent address, where the most secure environment meets the darkest corners of the human psyche. Step into the world where the most dangerous criminals, the architects of chaos, are held. This is not just a prison. It's a haven for those who have plunged into the darkest depths of crime and terror. ADX Florence, with its daunting exterior, houses leaders of violent gangs, both homegrown and international terrorists from notorious organizations like Al-Qaeda. Zacarias Moussaoui, the only person convicted in a civilian court for the tragic events of 9/11, now calls ADX Florence home. The very walls that echo with his footsteps hold the secrets of his involvement in one of the darkest days in modern history. And then there's Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, a name that sends shivers down spines. The mastermind behind the Boston Marathon bombings found his way to this fortress in July 2015. Imagine the stories these walls could tell, the secrets they guard of the minds behind acts that shook nations. But the cast of characters doesn't end there. The Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, is the man who struck terror in the hearts of many with his deadly mail bombs. Walked the same halls as shoe bomber Richard Reed, the man who aimed to turn a commercial flight into a fiery catastrophe. ADX Florence is not just a prison. It's a repository of infamy. The echoes of tragedy resonate in every corner. Terry Nichols, accomplice to the Oklahoma City bomber, Eric Rudolph, the Olympic Park bomber, and the notorious Soviet spy Robert Hansen. These aren't just names. They are the architects of devastation, each leaving an indelible mark on history. And then, of course, there's El Chapo, who's going to call ADX's home for the rest of his life. Well, he asked for it himself, so let's have a look at what this prison is all about. As you stand at the threshold of this modern-day fortress, the Alcatraz of the Rockies, the question lingers in the air. What tales do these walls guard, and what secrets are etched into the very fabric of this fortress of infamy? What is the cost of keeping El Chapo in Supermax ADX? Well, for that, you need to know how this prison is different from others. And why is it the worst nightmare of any inmate? Let's have a look at its history. In the annals of history, there's a tale that unfolds within the towering walls of ADX Florence, a tale that began with blood-stained blades and a call for the most secure prison ever conceived. It all traces back to 1983, when members of the Aryan Brotherhood, Thomas Silverstein and Clayton Fountain, committed a shocking act within the confines of the United States Penitentiary, Marion. In the span of a few harrowing hours, correctional officers Merle Klutz and Robert Hoffman fell victim to fatal stabbings, an alarming occurrence blamed on the deficiencies of prison design. Then entered Norman Carlson, the visionary director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Fueled by the urgency to isolate the most dangerous, uncontrollable inmates, Carlson envisioned a facility that would redefine the very essence of incarceration. USP Marion became the crucible for this experiment, embracing a 23-year lockdown that served as a precursor to the birth of ADX Florence. Carlson, unyielding in his belief, argued for draconian measures to contain those with absolutely no concern for human life. He saw the need for a fortress that could confine criminals desperate enough to commit heinous acts, even against corrections officers or fellow inmates, hoping for a death sentence. Thus, the blueprint for ADX Florence began to take shape. On January 10, 1995, Florence opened its foreboding gates. The county, already home to 9 prisons, was lured by the promise of 750 to 900 jobs, both permanent and temporary. Residents, driven by the prospect of economic growth, raised $160,000 to secure 600 acres for the construction of this formidable institution. The facility, a $60 million testament to architectural prowess, was designed by 2 leading firms in Colorado Springs. Now let's peel back the layers of ADX Florence itself, a place where solitude reaches an unprecedented zenith. This prison, sprawled across 21 acres, is unique in its commitment to near-total solitary confinement. Within its concrete veins, it houses 344 inmates, with the potential to accommodate up to 490. For at least the initial 3 years, occupants are denied contact with fellow prisoners anywhere on the premises. It's a place where time unfolds in isolated echoes, where outside time is earned through good behavior. The lucky few might glimpse a larger cell with vaulted ceilings, known ominously as the concrete pit or empty swimming pool. It's a place where isolation becomes an art, where every step towards humanity is earned, not given. Beneath the quiet facade of the Colorado Rockies lies a fortress of solitude, an enigma veiled in poured concrete and razor wire, ADX Florence Prison. As we unlock the secrets of its imposing exterior, we discover a world where every breath, every step, is meticulously controlled in a dance between security and isolation. Step into the prison cells, each a Spartan chamber above ground, connected by a subterranean corridor that weaves through the heart of this fortress. The furniture, if you can call it that, is a stark reminder of the severity within. A desk, stool, and bed, all fashioned from cold, unyielding concrete. But that's not all. Even the toilet, a simple necessity, holds a secret. It shuts off if blocked. The shower, a lifeline to cleanliness, operates on a timer, preventing floods that could disrupt the meticulous order. The sink lacks a tap, eliminating any potential danger, a calculated move in this chess game of security. Rooms, where the light of day is a distant memory, may house polished steel mirrors, bolted to the wall, an electric light controlled only remotely, a radio, and a television offering glimpses of a world beyond these formidable walls. Yet, the 4-inch by 4-foot windows, a cruel joke of sorts, deny inmates any knowledge of their specific location within the complex. All they can see is slivers of the sky and the looming roof, rendering escape plans virtually impossible. The concrete pit of ADX is a paradoxical space that mimics an empty swimming pool. Here, prisoners exercise, confined to a realm where the sky above is their only witness. The pit is a confined space, allowing a prisoner a mere 10 steps in a straight line, or 31 steps in a circle. It's a microcosm of freedom, a stark reminder that even in exercise, the grip of control remains unyielding. As we peer into the educational and recreational facets, a paradox emerges. Programs like the General Education Development Program, vocational training, and parenting initiatives offer a semblance of normalcy. Yet prisoners remain tethered to their cells for 23 hours, with only 5 precious hours of recreation each week. What makes ADX Florence one of the world's most secure buildings? It's a symphony of surveillance. Motion detectors, cameras, and 1,400 remote-controlled steel doors. The eyes of officers in the control center never close, monitoring inmates 24 hours a day. A panic button stands ready to slam shut every door in the facility at the hint of an escape attempt. Outside, pressure pads and 12-foot-tall razor wire fences draw a line in the sand, guarded by officers armed to the teeth. As an added layer of defense, laser beams and attack dogs patrol the perimeter, leaving would-be escapees with nowhere to hide. Deep within the fortress of ADX Florence, every move is monitored, and every door stands as a formidable barrier. On rare occasions, the prisoners, some of the most dangerous men in the world, are granted a brief respite. A walk, a fleeting connection to the outside world, limited to a select circle that may include a lawyer. But make no mistake, every step, every gesture is scrutinized, their every move under the unblinking gaze of surveillance. Despite this rare privilege, convicts have rights. One 15-minute non-legal phone call per month, a lifeline to the outside. Visitors are allowed, but under strict conditions. Thick glass windows separate the incarcerated from those who dare to visit. No touching, no connection beyond the visual barrier. Yet, within this labyrinth of control, unseen eyes linger. 24 hours a day, officers watch over the prison, armed not just with physical presence, but also with a network of motion detectors and hidden cameras. A remote control, not just for doors, but for the very fabric of ADX Florence. The control room, where officers surveil every inch, every movement, ready to spot the slightest anomaly. The stakes are high. The consequences are severe. A panic button, a single touch triggering the lockdown of 1,400 doors, sealing off any escape route. A fortress of control where even the air is monitored. Motion sensors and pressure pads, inside and outside the cells, have a silent vigilance that alerts to the slightest deviation. But what if, against all odds, someone attempts the unthinkable? Scaling a 12-foot-tall razor wire fence, facing armed guards in watchtowers. A daring escape that demands not only cunning but sheer audacity. Guards patrol with attack dogs, ever watchful for those who might dare to challenge the formidable walls. And then the focus narrows. El Chapo, a name synonymous with escape, finds himself confined within these impenetrable walls. A life sentence, a final chapter to a tale of 2 escapes. The question lingers: how does one ensure that the man who defied captivity twice will stay within this fortress? ADX Florence is the chosen battleground for the authorities to ensure that El Chapo's journey ends here. The end of the road, the final chapter on the highway to hell. ADX Florence is not merely a prison. It's a fortress where every detail, from the concrete walls to the intricate surveillance, is a testament to the pursuit of control. Well, that should be enough info to make you aware of what ADX really is. If you don't already know much about El Chapo, here's a brief history. Joaquin Archivaldo Guzman Lora, a name that echoes through the corridors of infamy as El Chapo. Born into poverty in Sinaloa, Mexico, El Chapo's journey into the criminal underworld began amidst the harsh landscapes of his upbringing. A childhood marred by physical abuse fueled his entrance into the drug trade, initially assisting his father in cultivating marijuana for local dealers. As the years unfolded, El Chapo's path intertwined with the rising drug lords of Mexico. By the late 1970s, he collaborated with Hector Luis Palma Salazar, mapping routes to transport drugs from Sinaloa into the United States. The intricate web of his criminal endeavors continued as he supervised logistics for Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo. However, destiny had other plans, and in 1988, El Chapo forged his own cartel after Felix's arrest. Under El Chapo's reign, the Sinaloa cartel became a powerhouse, orchestrating the production, smuggling, and distribution of massive quantities of cocaine, methamphetamine, marijuana, and heroin. Pioneering the use of distribution cells and elaborate tunnels, he carved a sinister legacy as the world's most prolific drug trafficker. Forbes hailed him as one of the most powerful individuals globally from 2009 to 2013, while the DEA drew parallels between his influence and wealth to that of the notorious Pablo Escobar. However, the saga took a dramatic turn in 1993 when Guzman was first captured in Guatemala. A sentence of 20 years in a Mexican prison for murder and drug trafficking awaited him, but the bars could not contain his cunning. In 2001, he orchestrated a jaw-dropping escape, bribing prison guards and disappearing from a federal maximum security prison. A fugitive, El Chapo's notoriety grew, marked by an $8.8 million reward on his head. The relentless pursuit culminated in his arrest in Mexico in 2014. Yet, El Chapo, true to his elusive nature, vanished once more in 2015, crafting an escape through a tunnel directly from his jail cell. The cat-and-mouse game reached its climax in January 2016 when Mexican authorities, in a dramatic shootout, recaptured El Chapo. A year later, the United States became the stage for his reckoning as he was extradited. In 2019, the verdict fell. Guilty of a myriad of criminal charges related to the Sinaloa cartel's leadership, a life sentence awaited him, and the walls of ADX Florence, Colorado, became his final abode. Inside the impenetrable fortress of ADX Florence, El Chapo finds himself in a world where escape seems like an insurmountable challenge. The Americans and Mexicans understood one thing clearly: El Chapo's wit, power, and influence demanded a level of confinement only ADX could provide. Robert Hood, the man who knows the prison inside out, expresses no doubt that El Chapo will try to escape. The question, however, is how difficult it would be for him to succeed. In the confines of ADX, El Chapo is locked down for about 23 hours a day, surrounded by cameras and the constant reminder of isolation. Former warden Robert Hood anticipates El Chapo's testing of the system, probing its vulnerabilities. The challenge for El Chapo becomes apparent: the reinforced concrete walls, pressure pads, motion detectors, and a watchful camera in his cell. Escape seems elusive, with surveillance that leaves no room for error. El Chapo attempting to bribe a guard is unlikely, given the rigorous vetting process. Even if a guard were involved, the control room's watchful eye, combined with pressure pads and motion detectors, poses formidable obstacles. The idea of manipulating the system through hacking faces the reality of guards, dogs, and a massive barbed wire fence. El Chapo, notorious as he may be, would find himself outnumbered and outmatched by the literal might of the American military guarding ADX. The structure itself adds another layer of complexity. El Chapo, like other inmates, is kept in the dark about his exact location within the prison, making any external support challenging. Even if a considerable number of El Chapo's men were waiting outside, the vast and isolated surroundings would make them easily detectable. In the shadows of the imposing ADX Florence, where isolation meets the human psyche, a nightmarish reality unfolds. Behind the impenetrable walls of this fortress, questions emerge about the methodology employed within. The tale of ADX Florence goes beyond its concrete and steel, delving into the human rights concerns that shroud the facility. As the spotlight turns to ADX Florence, human rights organizations, including Amnesty International, raise unsettling questions about the methods and design employed within its walls. Former inmates recount chilling tales of inhumane conditions, sparking debates about the ethical implications of such high-security prisons. One such inmate, Rodney Jones, vividly recalls his days in hell. Struggling with bipolar disorder, Jones found himself at the mercy of an indifferent staff. Denied medication, he resorted to self-harm, only to face medieval-style restraints as a response. Jones sheds light on the plight of fellow inmates, some grappling with severe mental issues, highlighting the questionable suitability of such strict regimes. The story takes a darker turn with the case of Michael Bucat, an illiterate man suffering from acute paranoia. Despite pleas for transfer and psychological treatment, Bucat's situation worsened. Activists, including the DC Prisoners Project, unearthed a troubling pattern of neglect and lack of proper treatment, leading to a class action lawsuit against the U.S. Bureau of Prisons in 2012. The lawsuit revealed a disturbing reality: mentally unstable prisoners subjected to maximum isolation conditions, amounting to what some argue is mental torture. The narrative expands, encompassing El Chapo's trial attorney, Jeffrey Lichtman, expressing concerns about Supermax conditions amounting to torture. Dr. Terry Cooper, a psychiatrist, delves into the psychological impact of long-term solitary confinement, stating that complete isolation tests resilience and sanity. The narrative unfolds as El Chapo's health becomes a focal point. Amidst concerns raised by Lichtman and psychiatric experts, the staff at ADX Florence remains unyielding, lauding the institution for successfully re-educating the most violent prisoners. Yet, former ADX warden Robert Hood contradicts this narrative. He paints a bleak picture, emphasizing that the place is not designed for rehabilitation, but rather as a daily descent into a lifeless existence. The dichotomy between the staff's perspective and the harsh reality faced by inmates deepens the mystery. Activists like David Cloud Summers expose the harsh truth that even with humane intentions, solitary confinement can lead to inmates losing their minds and hurting themselves. The legal team's evaluation of 45 ADX prisoners unveils a staggering 70% with serious mental illnesses, prompting questions about the effectiveness and ethics of the prison's approach. The debate reaches its zenith as researchers, including Dr. Craig Haney, attest to the devastating effects of solitary confinement at ADX. Inmates resorting to hunger strikes, force feeding, and psychological distress paint a grim picture of a prison veering into the realms of an asylum. The tale of ADX Florence becomes a haunting exploration of whether the toughest prison in the country has become an incubator for mental illness. As the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility in Florence, Colorado, continues to stir discussion, it leaves a lingering question. Is it an achievement of the American penal system or a notorious failure that demands reinvention? In the silence of ADX Florence, where isolation is perfected, the narrative unfolds, inviting scrutiny into a realm where the human spirit is pushed to its limits. As the debate rages on, the tale of ADX Florence remains a chilling saga, challenging perceptions of justice, humanity, and the true cost of incarceration. But we're still left with one thing to ponder: what's the cost of keeping El Chapo in ADX Supermax? The Supermax detains approximately 375 inmates in solitary confinement, often exceeding 22 hours a day. The annual cost to the U.S. for each prisoner is over $78,000. This facility is home to some of the most high-risk individuals, including Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, 9/11 plotter Zacarias Moussaoui, and World Trade Center bomber Ramzi Youssef. Renowned for its stringent security measures, It stands as the most fortified prison in the United States. The high price of keeping El Chapo in Supermax, specifically ADX Florence, extends beyond the formidable security measures. While the physical and technological barriers are designed to ensure escape is nearly impossible, the financial implications of maintaining such a facility add another layer to the narrative. The costs associated with operating a maximum security prison of this caliber are astronomical. From the state-of-the-art surveillance systems, motion detectors, and pressure pads to the highly trained personnel, every aspect demands substantial financial investment. The infrastructure itself, with its reinforced concrete walls and specialized design to prevent any form of escape, comes at a significant cost. ADX Florence is not just a prison. It's a fortress that requires constant maintenance and upgrades to stay ahead of evolving security threats. Personnel expenses contribute significantly to the high cost of maintaining ADX Florence. The facility employs a specialized and well-vetted staff, including guards, administrative personnel, and support staff, all trained to handle the unique challenges posed by high-profile inmates like El Chapo. The expertise required to operate and manage a prison of this nature demands competitive salaries and ongoing training. The health and well-being of inmates at ADX Florence are closely monitored, adding another layer of expense. El Chapo's complaints of physical, emotional, and mental torture raise questions about the healthcare services provided within the facility. The cost of medical care, psychological support, and overall inmate well-being contributes significantly to the overall operational expenses. The saga of El Chapo's incarceration in ADX Florence underscores not only the financial, but also the moral cost of imprisoning individuals at such high security levels. The balance between ensuring public safety and addressing the human rights concerns of prisoners poses a perpetual challenge. In a broader context, the allocation of resources to maintain facilities like ADX Florence raises questions about the priorities within the criminal justice system. The substantial financial investment in high-security prisons prompts a reflection on whether these resources could be better utilized in preventive measures, rehabilitation, or addressing systemic issues within the criminal justice system. The tale goes beyond the individual and becomes a reflection of a justice system grappling with the costs, both tangible and intangible, of keeping notorious figures behind bars in a fortress designed to defy escape. The conclusion is stark. The only way El Chapo might escape ADX is in Hollywood's next blockbuster movie. The notorious drug lord, once adept at slipping through the fingers of the law, now finds himself in a cell that even he describes as torture, physical, emotional, and mental. Don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth stories that will leave you wondering, is that really happening? See you in the next one.